Hello, and welcome to Unleash Monday, where we talk about the brain, especially the gifted brain, and how does it affect our thinking and experience of the world differently. There are a lot of stereotypes and stigma around giftedness, and I'm here to challenge those. I'm here to raise awareness and to have a conversation around this topic of what does it mean to be a gifted adult. Common experience among gifted folks is that they feel out of place. They don't quite fit in. They are too sensitive, too intense, too emotional, too overexcitable, and too deep thinkers about the world and about themselves. If you have been called too much of about anything, then this show is for you. My name is Nadia. I'm too loud, too colorful, too bubbly, too bossy, and love to talk too much. So welcome to my world, and I'm so happy you're here. Hello, everyone. Can you believe it's already December? What a strange and difficult year it has been for all of us. And finally, this year is coming to an end. But 2021 doesn't just mark a new year, it's actually the start of a new decade. So I'm looking forward to this new decade, and I'm taking a bold guess and saying that this is going to be the decade of mRNA vaccines. But I also hope that 2021 will bring a change, especially these current discussions and also conspiracy theories, for example, centered around Bill Gates and his foundation. They kind of irritate me, and I do hope that this new decade will also bring a change in terms of information based on fact and reasoning. But I don't know how this is actually going to happen, but I just wish that this will bring a change in the new decade. But before we head into the new year, we have two more interesting interviews for you. Today, we have a very amazing guest. Her name is Pascale Co, and she's joining from Norway. So she has a very interesting story, how she found out about her own giftedness only 2 years ago. And she already did work as a Gestalt therapist, and what that means and how it impacted her work, she's going to share with us today. And it just shows another example of how finding out about one's giftedness, it can really change somebody's life. It can change your own perception of yourself, and it can give you a real big boost of empowerment. And this is why I think her story is so great, because she shares how it impacted her, how she found out, and then how this translated into her personal life, but also how it translated into her work and how she's now helping her clients and how she's moving forward. So it was really a great conversation I had with Pascale. And so without further ado, I want to share this with you. Please enjoy. Welcome, Pascale. I'm super happy you're here joining me this morning.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be with you too.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how your own journey took place. How did you find out about your own giftedness and how did it influence you?
Well, so I'm French and I've been living in Norway for the past almost 25 years. And my journey with giftedness actually started about 2 years ago. And I had a discussion once with my sister during Christmas time. And she's a psychologist in France. And she told me that she'd been doing some research about giftedness. And she was thinking that maybe we were all gifted in the family. And when she said it, I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't have a high IQ, you know. And then she looked at me and she said, oh, no, but it's not just about IQ. It's not just about having a high IQ. And then she told me a bit more about it. And then I thought, nah, our father is gifted. Yeah, but I don't think I am, Well, then time passed, some weeks, and I started thinking a little bit more about that. And then I realized that, but my son probably is gifted. Because I started reading all these characteristics about gifted people, and then I realized, oh, yes, he is.
So what are the signs that you could see in your son? Like, was there something particular?
Yeah, what I was seeing is that, for example, I've always been speaking to him as an adult. He was at the time a little bit over 10 years old. And I mean, all his life, I'd just been speaking to him as if I was speaking to another adult. And sometimes we were having conversations that I could have had with an adult. And also, he's very gifted in the way that he speaks several languages already. And he's always very curious. And he could have these reflections that were very grown up reflections. He also obviously was highly sensitive and highly emotional. And he also had this way of, I mean, he had this complexity about him and this intensity and this way of wanting to go deep into things and to, yeah, it wasn't just flat in a way, if I can say it this way. I think one thing which is very typical for gifted children is that they're always trying to negotiate. And he's a heavy negotiator. That can be tiresome. I'm telling you, it still is. And that's one of the most difficult things I face as a parent, actually. And he always has good arguments. That's the worst.
So you realized your son probably is gifted.
Yes. So I realized he was probably gifted. And then when I realized that, well, my father was, my son is, then I thought, okay, well, maybe I should ask questions about myself a bit more. And then I went and dug a little deeper in this in the same time as I had conversations still with my siblings, because we have a brother also. And then we found that there's a man in Belgium. At the time, we didn't have much knowledge about people dealing with this in France. And in Norway, there was no talk about that at all. And we found someone in Belgium who was working with gifted people. And we decided that we would all take a trip to Belgium to see this man and talk to him and find out, are we gifted, actually? And so we did. And that was a very fun thing to do, all of us together. And yeah, we found out, like most people who come to see a gifted specialist, that yes, we are gifted. And then, the question was also a question that I've heard in some of your previous podcasts. Are there any people who come and see the gifted specialists and who are actually not gifted? And the answer is usually that very often no, because when you ask yourself if you're gifted in the first place, then you probably are, especially when you're doubting it also. So that's when everything started. And then I decided, okay, it really made a lot of sense to me in a way, even though it took its time to make its way into me. But then the more I started digging into that and finding about the characteristics, reading about it, the different parts of my life who didn't make sense together, the more the puzzle came into shape in a way. And it was a huge sense of relief in a way, a huge sense of empowerment also, I have to say. Very often I say I feel like Asterix drinking the magic potion. It's it's a bit weird to say it, but that's how it feels.
I felt the same, and I learned about my own giftedness only in May, so it's only been a few months. But just knowing that there's nothing wrong with me in a sense, but that my brain just is a little bit differently, it gave me this empowerment. And this is why I really would like to create awareness and fight the stereotypes. And as you say, a lot of women, especially, probably also men, that are confronted in adulthood. And somebody points out, maybe you are gifted. Have you ever looked into this topic? The first reaction is always me? No. I have not encountered anybody in this, short period of time, but I've had this conversation a few times already. And it's really hard for people to embrace it. But once they do, it is very empowering. So you said it might also have influenced your career choice or what you do in your career?
Yes, it did, because, I was already a Gestalt therapist at the time. It's a type of psychotherapy where we work with both the body and the thoughts and the feelings in the same time. So we're not just in the thoughts. And we also work with what is here and now. So the idea is that, yes, we may have some traumas from the past, but they're still creating some distortion in the here and now. So we're working with what is now in a way. I was already a Gestalt therapist when I came across this giftedness stuff. But then I realized, after I started reading more and more about giftedness, I realized, oh my God, but all my clients are gifted. And that was a very strange thing, because then I thought maybe I just see them, because I want to see giftedness. So I really asked myself a lot of questions about that, because I didn't want, that was very important to not be wrong, Also, the perfectionist in me, hello. So I realized that many of my clients were probably gifted. And I also realized that I needed to work with them in a different way, actually, because just the same way that I had needed some information about giftedness to put words on things that were important for me, on hurts that were important and difficulties that were important, my clients needed that too. It wasn't enough to work on the traumas in a therapeutic way, in a way. They needed some psychoeducation about giftedness as well. So I decided in the beginning to work a little subtly with that with my clients. And then I realized that when I did it, actually the therapeutic work went a lot better. There was a lot more flow in my conversations and in my relations with the clients. And it really changed a lot of things. And that encouraged me to work more openly with it. And now I have actually, these past 6 months, I've decided that I'm going to really have a page about that on my homepage, and to kind of advert openly for me working with gifted people. So it's transformed in a way my professional life in that way, that I've decided to really have a bigger focus on it and a more obvious one, if that makes any sense.
First, you kind of sneakily incorporated the giftedness without telling your clients. And then later on, you started telling your clients, obviously.
Yeah, some of them at least, because it's not an obvious thing that, sometimes I can sense that a client is gifted, but it's not I see that it's not the how to say that? It's not the topic of the therapy, at least not all the time. So I don't bring it up on purpose whenever I see it. But when I think that it can be useful for the therapy, then I can talk about it with the clients. And the funny thing is that very often I ask them, have you read my homepage? Have you seen this page about giftedness? And they're like, no. And and some of them, when I then ask them, oh, have you ever taken an IQ test or something? Oh, yes, I have a high IQ, And they come to me not even knowing that I work with that somehow. It's really a strange attraction, works in mysterious ways, if I can say it this way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that have taken an IQ test in the past or as a child, or they've never been told that this has an influence in the rest of their life. It's not like, you have a high IQ, but you're still normal in a sense, right? It does have some other implication that they've never been coached about, they've never been told about. And this is exactly where I hope with this podcast can create a little bit of awareness and fighting these stereotypes. And I think it's funny when you say, all my clients are gifted. When I realized about my own giftedness, I was like, all my friends are gifted, or a high portion of them are gifted. And my partner first was like dismissive. He's like, no, you're seeing it because you want to see it. But I think without knowing what we look for in people, we find the people that are on the same wavelengths. And so I guess the clients sought out you because you spoke to them on your website or however, without actually using the word giftedness.
Yes, exactly. I think we sense something in the way we express ourselves. In the way I express myself on my website, the things I say, probably I say them in a certain way that attracts this type of person. Exactly. So it was fun.
And when you tell your clients, oh, I think you might be gifted, what is their normal reaction? What do they say?
Very often, if I'm very blunt and I just say it like that, they will deny it and they will not recognize themselves in it. And also because very often they don't know just like when I got to know the first time, I didn't put in the word giftedness the same thing that were really there in a way. So they have an idea. And the word in Norwegian also is a bit ambiguous. So it's usually not received in the way that I mean it. So very often I will go through the high sensitive channel first, because I've noticed that most of the gifted people who come to me in therapy, they actually come probably because of their high sensitivity and the fact that they're highly emotional as well, because that's where the traumas are usually. So I usually go through this channel, and then when they can admit that they're highly sensitive and highly emotional, then usually I'm asking something more, and then I'm either telling them, well, maybe you could check out what's written on my website, and see if it rings a bell for you, or I just say it, and then I ask them to check it out anyway on my website and see if it makes any sense to you, and then we'll see. But a few of them have actually told, but I've actually had an IQ test, so yes. So that's funny too, because they haven't really, as you said, they haven't really connected the fact that their high IQ can have an expression which is not just intellectual ability in a way.
Mm. And I had now a few friends that I also pushed and said, like, maybe you are. And I'm not an expert. So I kind of like pushed him to go and get evaluated or take it by reading other people's books, obviously. And then the next step is, once they have done an evaluation, an IQ test, and it's actually been verified that they are indeed gifted, the next question is, so now what? What do I do with this new information? What can it help me with, knowing this giftedness?
Well, that's a question that some of my clients ask too, and they often ask it to me, what you've told me that, and now what do I do with it? Well, my usual answer is that I don't have the answer, But what I see is that very often it takes time to get to the answer. You have to let it sink, you have to get to know it in a way, and you have to get to know yourself as a gifted person. You have to take the time that you need to realize all the implications of this in your life. So I cannot tell anybody what they need to do with it, but the main thing for me is that it brings awareness in our life. And so it's like wearing a new set of glasses, it's like it helps you see life in a different perspective and yourself in a different perspective. So maybe what we need to do with it is just wear those glasses a bit more often and see how it changes what we see about the world around us, but also about ourselves. And I think that we can use it also to, well, for me, I've been using it to repair old wounds. It's brought me a lot of awareness about understanding a lot of things that happened in my past and why they were this way. And also maybe relieving some of the responsibility that I'd taken on myself and letting it go to realize that it was not about me, actually. It was about other things, if it makes any sense.
This makes total sense, and I feel the same. And I think first it has to sink in. People have to process it. And then I think the first step, I don't know, it was for you as well, the first few days was very, very emotional. I cried a lot. It was kind of like relief, frustration, like all these emotions came up, and I didn't know, like I wasn't prepared for that. And I heard another friend telling me the same story, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't, mentally prepare you for this. I just told you get evaluated. And then like,
it's easy to forget that it's actually an emotional process, because when I tell about it to my clients, sometimes I forget that it can be actually very intense for them, because I'm so far away from the beginning and I've forgotten a bit how it is. So sometimes I need to just tell myself, just remember to just go slow. So yeah, I agree with you. It can be really tough.
But I think once people then do accept the fact and get to know, as you say, you have to kind of go through your life and really reevaluate encounters, also what you experienced in school or even in university, in a job, in different situations. And as you say, it's like a puzzle piece coming together. And for me, it was, even now looking back, it's really the red thread through all my life. And
Yes.
so much makes so much more sense. And then the next step is really this empowering feeling that we get, right? This empowerment.
Exactly. And I think it's with this next step of empowering, what comes is actually a certain focus. Because when you've processed what has been happening in your life before, then you realize all the things that are not working for you in a way, because you're gifted. And then you understand which things you should not be looking for or you should not be taking in your life in a way. And that gives more focus because you are going for the things that really work for you. And especially to me, it's been giving a lot of focus professionally speaking. I've been really more empowered also as a therapist and as an entrepreneur in a way. And that's something that I like to work with, especially with women, because I like to say that I'm helping people to find their inner flame. And once they've found it again, we're blowing on it together to make it bigger and to make it stronger. And then they usually find a sense of purpose and a sense of a direction that they either didn't feel that they have in their life before, or that they had lost. Some find their calling, and yeah, it's really a fantastic thing to follow people through that, I think.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, reevaluating and giving the sense of empowerment, that if you're not part of the majority of people, you get a lot of good intentional advice, but the advice might not apply to you. So you've been given all your life advice which doesn't suit you. And once you get to know yourself better, you have this ability to say, okay, thank you for your opinion and your advice, but I'm going to do it my way.
Exactly. And I think maybe it's when you get to know your giftedness, you get strengthened in the fact that you were not so wrong, actually. You were actually quite right. And then it gives you more self-confidence to follow your path, even though it looks like it's a bit stranger path. So it gives more self-confidence and more inner strength, actually.
So you say you work with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, not directly, but sometimes people who come to me, they actually need a little boost as far as their professional life. And I've also seen that many of the friends that I have around me are people who are women, who are entrepreneurs, or who are willing to establish themselves as entrepreneurs. And I see that they often come to me to get some information and some help and some support. So that's a direction that I would like to go more in, because I think it's very important. And I think that more gifted women, there are many gifted women who are actually wanting to support themselves to create their own working area and working playground in a way. And I think they need to do that for their own welfare and for the welfare of the world around us as well. And I would love to support them more in a way. So I'm kind of not knowing exactly where that is going to lead, but it's leading somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure you're helping a lot of them. And I can't wait to hear more from your journey later on. Just going back a little bit, because I think some of the listener are in their journey of finding out who they are, and there's still like this resistance, like, oh, but not me. And they're not yet talking to a coach or a psychologist. So they're reading maybe a checklist and they can relate, but they're still not embracing it. Just to show them that, quote unquote, the clients that come to you are normal, and who are the people that come to you, or what are their most pressing questions when they come? They obviously probably don't know that it's about their giftedness, but is there a common theme that people come to you?
Well, I would say that the common theme is people they want something else out of life, but they don't really know what. So they feel a kind of unsatisfaction, and they don't really know how to place it. Very often that they have everything. They have the husband, the family, the car, the job, and still they're not fulfilled. They're not satisfied, and they they don't know why. And this type of clients is very common. And very often they feel a strong sense of guilt for feeling unsatisfied when they already have everything and should feel satisfied. So that's one of the big things. I also have a lot of clients who are not satisfied with their relationships, either when they are already in a relationship or because they have troubles relating to other people. And that's a very common thing, that they come to me because they want to learn how to communicate better or how to feel more at ease in a relationship with other people. And then people who are really very, very tired also, on the verge of burnout, for example, and that's very typical. And also, of course, people who have experienced traumas and who are ready to work on them and to do something about it, to live a better life. And in general, we work a lot with emotions and with getting connected to our needs, actually, in therapy with all of my clients.
So is there anything you would like to share or you wish you knew earlier, something you wish people would know about the topic? Or
I think the one thing that is important for me here in Norway is the fact that gifted people are usually left to themselves, because we assume that, well, just like in many other countries, I guess, but we assume that because they're very intelligent, then they will just take care of themselves. They have everything they need to be able to manage the rest of their lives somehow. And I think that's the one part that I would like to address, actually, because I never understood why I needed so much to go in therapy before I understood that I was gifted. And that's because I was highly sensitive and highly emotional, that I needed this therapy, this support all the time. Well, that was also a bit more than that, but still. And I was kind of feeling a bit guilty, and why am I that sick that I need to go in therapy so much, until I realized that it's not about being sick, it's about wanting to be better, to have a better experience, and to also, it's about self-development for me. It's about knowing myself better. So therapy can be used as a tool for self-development. So in Norway, it's a country where we take a lot of care for the people who are disabled, who have difficulties, who have learning difficulties, for example, and things like that. But we don't pay too much attention to the people who are on the other side of the spectrum, in a way. And we do we cut the tall poppy short. So I would like the mentality around giftedness to change, because giftedness is not about thinking that we are better than other people, that the gifted are better than the non-gifted. But it's about realizing that we just have a way of approaching life differently, which doesn't have to be labeled with better or worse, but which is different and which is inviting different challenges that need to be coped with, just like non-gifted people need to cope with their own challenges. And I would like for the topic of giftedness to be more open, so that we can have discussions about that without what's called in Norway the law of jante, which is the law that says that you shouldn't put yourself above anybody else. And I would like for us to be able to talk about giftedness without having this fear that somebody is trying to pretend that they're better than other people. It would make things so much more easy if we could, for example, when we look for a job, say, well, I'm gifted and in my work environment, I have some special needs to take care of, and I need to work with special people, or different people. And it doesn't mean that I need to work with gifted people necessarily, but I need at least to have a certain type of communication with people to be a good worker. And I think this kind of openness is important in the future to have happy people.
yes, I agree. And I love what you're saying. I couldn't agree more. You said it all. Raising awareness and also, getting rid of this stereotype and this stigma and using the term without all of this baggage, right? And I think, as you said, in different countries, in different cultural contexts, in different languages, the word is also different. And in English, obviously on this podcast, we speak English, the term giftedness, it can also have a little bit of an esoteric kind of notion, whereas in German, it's called hochbegabt. It's like high potential. So it's a different, I think in French it's as well, is haut potentiel.
Yeah, there are plenty of words in French, but you can use haut potentiel. But I think for what I've seen, the discussion about the word used is going on in every country in a way. So I'm thinking that says that it's not about the word, it's about the concept. So the fact that it's so difficult to find a word that we find okay to use on that concept says that there is still a lot of prejudice and a lot of stereotypes and received ideas about this that we need to address. Because usually when a topic doesn't create too much emotional turmoil, then whatever word we use, it's okay. Yeah. But I liked very much what, I think it was Jennifer Harvey Salin who said something about the word giftedness in one of the podcasts that you had. And I like that she said that we have also, or she chose to use a word that everybody could understand, even though there was a stigma with it. Because I had several rounds with myself also about the word, and I decided that, yes, I mean, there are so few people who know what that giftedness is in Norwegian anyway, that if I use a word which is totally unknown, then people won't be able to relate to it. And then when they speak with people who use the regular word, they won't know that they speak about the same thing. So.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that I chose a podcast name which doesn't include giftedness, but I didn't try to come up with a new word. So I just used kind of a generic word just to get people going into the new week, but then kind of also capture the people that have not embraced giftedness for themselves yet. Maybe I get somebody to listen and sneak it in there. But then during the episodes, yes, I used the word as well because we're all talking about the same thing. And as Jennifer said, otherwise we create new vocabulary. And in the end, as you say, in all the countries, even they call it differently, they're having the same discussions. And it's
exactly.
It's not about the culture. It's not about the word. It's really about what it stands for and the prejudice and what comes with it, right?
Exactly.
And so you said you're French, you're in Norway, and you also speak English. So you actually offer your service online in all of these languages. Do you want to share a little bit about what you do, what you offer, if somebody wants to reach out, and especially also mention where people can find you? And I will also link in the show notes a link to your website.
Yes, I have my practice in the south of Norway. So I meet most of my clients face to face at my office, but I can also work online because I know that, I mean, gifted people don't always have a therapist in their vicinity. So sometimes online works just as well as meeting face to face. So I can do therapy online as well. And yes, I can do therapy in Norwegian, in French, and in English. And I do also coaching for those who don't feel that they need to go so deep, but who maybe need more help about their entrepreneurship, for example, or just their work in general. And I also work with couples, and that's something that I think is very interesting as far as gifted people is concerned, because there is very little research done about gifted couple or gifted people in a couple. And as a couples counselor, I see that it's actually a very interesting topic to look at. So I'm trying to get some information about that as I work with gifted people in couples. But I don't do couple therapy online, or very little, because I think it can be a bit tough. So it depends on the situation. So that's it. And yes, people can find me on my homepage, which is, I don't know if in English it will sound maybe a bit strange, but it's Arendal Psychotherapy.no. And you can also send me an email, of course, and to get in touch with me. So there's no problem.
Thank you. I think so. I try not to say too much while you were talking, but you can see my head nodding and pointing at me, like everything you said, I can relate. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing everything with us and for being here and for taking your time. I don't know. Do you think, is it okay if we mention that yesterday you reached out to me and you were like, oh, but Nadia, I have imposter syndrome. What do I have to offer to your audience? Do you think it's really going to be a good idea to come on this show?
Yeah, I think it's really nice that you're mentioning it, actually, because I know that a lot of gifted people, and you've mentioned it before, a lot of gifted people suffer of this imposter syndrome. And I think it's actually a very nice way of illustrating that, to say that I did too. Yes.
Yeah, you were very close of canceling on me, and I kind of
Yes.
ask you, please come and we have a conversation. And I think I got so much information from this. So thank you so much for going out of your comfort zone and coming. And I feel the same with this podcast, who am I to do this? I'm not a therapist. I'm not an expert. I just felt like it's needed. And I think maybe the fact that everything is closed down this year, everybody's stuck home. So when I do this podcast, I'm basically me and my computer, and then I put it online, and that helps this distance to get over the imposter syndrome. But just so the audience knows, we're all struggling with this.
Oh, yes. Yes. There's no question about that. The challenges of giftedness also appear in me every now and then, even though I'm a therapist and I'm working with that every day. But hey, nobody's perfect. So
yeah, even though we strive for perfection, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But that's another thing.
Yes. No, it's important to show that, we're still just the same gifted people anyway. Yeah. But it gets better, though. It gets better, I have to say.
It gets better. And that's also one of the reasons, knowing about your giftedness and what it means, the imposter syndrome, the perfectionism, and then that leading to procrastination. It helps to overcome it, because then you see the patterns and you're like, oh, this is it. So
yes. And that's why I think your podcast is really nice, and I like the idea about raising awareness. So thank you very much for having me and helping me participate in you raising awareness around the topic of giftedness.
Thank you, Pascale, for being here. It was a huge pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. And I guess if you listened until now, I hope this is a sign you did indeed enjoy this show. If you learned something new, or if it helped you in any way, or if you know someone who would profit from this information, there are a few ways on how you can support me and this podcast. You can, for example, easily share this podcast or just the episode with a friend to raise awareness. And you can find links to all the episodes and to social media on my website on unleashmonday.com, or follow me on Instagram at unleash.monday. So you can easily share this, or you can also directly go to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can also share it right there. And if you truly want to support, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. This would really mean a lot. You can give me a few stars, and you can also leave a written review, which would really make a big difference. And if you're bold, you can also screenshot it and share it on social media, for example, on Instagram, tag me. That would make a big difference. So at the moment, I don't have anything to offer than just saying thank you, but hopefully in the future, I can also offer you something in return for your kind words on reviews. So thank you so much for taking your time. And I hope I see you in 2 weeks when we have another amazing guest and the last episode of this year. So have a wonderful week, and I see you in 2 weeks. Bye.